Hello, folks. Thank you for listening to the Jeff and Axe Horror Show. My name is Jeff. Over there is my partner, Axe. How you doing, Axe?
Awesome.
Well, Axe, we got a little bit of news to share before we delve into the cinematic goodness of this week. Tell us a little bit about this show you're going to be going to here in early June. It's down in Ohio, right? You could tell the people more than I know about it.
Sure. It's a music festival. It's called Pyro de Mayo. It's at a campground festival site in Garrettsville, Ohio. It's called the Nelson Ledges Rock Quarry. It's a 4-day festival this year. The main headliners are Nako, Satsang, and Rising Appalachia, folk jam band kind of stuff. But I'll be taking my gongs and singing bowls and tongue drum, and me and my friends are going to the festival, and we'll be camping. A whole site that we're going to be set up at with meditation workshops. So while people are walking through the woods, you'll get random people to stop in and try out the workshops. I call what I do Fire Tiger Soundscapes. I just ordered by Flatlander Audio Studios. They did a really nice recording. It's about a 17-minute long meditation. And us on Facebook, Fire Tiger Soundscapes. I just got a brand new gong today, actually. I love these meditation instruments. Last year and a half, I've really taken a liking to all of it. I met some really cool people that told me what to do, what not to do. Singing bowls, the ones I have are quartz crystal. They're colored glass aligned to the chakras. So you got all the colors that go along with each chakra of the Kundalini. And the gongs are planetary tune gongs. So that's rotate and they make a frequency. That frequency and you can multiply it or go up in octaves to the point where the human ear can hear it. So we'll be doing that. It's in Ohio in Garrettsville on 5th. They moved it up a month. It was always in the past, it was May 5th, but the last time they had it, it rained the whole time. So they're pushing it into June, hoping it'll be warmer. That way you can get in the water, and I'm excited about that. And like I said, I got a brand new gong today. It's a Vietnamese tuned gong. It's the D note, which is the sacral chakra. It's a nipple gong, which is different from my other two. The other two are German-made gongs. This one is Vietnamese. Vietnam is actually the birthplace of the gong. The oldest ones that we know come from Vietnam, and they outdate the ones in China.
Oh, okay. Wasn't aware of that, Axe, but this gathering here, is there a website for this that people can go to if they want to go to this?
Yeah, Pyro de Mayo website, Nelson Ledges, both have their own event page that'll lead you to a ticket. The tickets, I don't know what they are now. They're somewhere around $300.
Okay, and the $300 covers the whole weekend, right?
Camping and everything. It's a lot of fun. And really great vendors, really good food, awesome music. It's real clean, beautiful water. It's a lot of fun.
All right, well, I'd feel a little guilty if I didn't share a little news with you myself before we get going here. As you know, I am part of the professional wrestling business, and I have been for a couple years now. One of the companies I work for is Powerbomb Wrestling down in Toledo, Ohio. But I just got another call today about another opportunity for Ultimate Championship Wrestling in Bay City, Michigan for a color commentary job. So I'm going to be starting on Saturday, May 18th. It's on Winona Street. I don't have the exact address here, but it's Winona Street at the old church in Bay City, Michigan. If anybody, we got any listeners up in that area that want to check us out, it's Ultimate Championship Wrestling. It's ucwwrestling.com. You know, it's gonna be interesting. You know, Axe going to another company and kind of expanding my horizons.
Best of luck to you, Jeff.
Thanks, man. I'm definitely gonna need it. No, hopefully not, but. Let's get right into this, Axe. Let's talk about some of the stuff that we watched this week. And I know you watched something that both of us kind of hold near and dear to our hearts, but we'll get to that in a second. First, I'll tell you some of the stuff that I watched. For some reason this week, I really went on a new craze as far as watching only new stuff. You know, there's a lot of times where you just want to sit back and watch old stuff But this week it was the complete opposite. I just wanted to watch some newer stuff, and I'll be honest with you, some of it was total shit, but there's, I found some diamonds in the rough that are definitely noteworthy for sure. So starting it off, I watched a movie from 2014, All the Devils Are Here. Now, it's kind of a slasher. It's a stereotypical type of slasher. It's set in Florida, and these kids are, on this camping trip or whatever to nowhere, of course, and they end up on this site where these people used to haunt back in the 60s, and they're called the Rainbow People, and they're basically a bunch of cannibalistic hippies, if you can kind of picture that. This is a really strange movie, and this is one of those movies, Axe, that I really judged by the cover. Really, really cool artwork on this movie, and I just had to give it a chance, but man, I was really disappointed. Just a boring movie, and it took me a lot to get through this. It actually took me 2 days to get through this. I was watching it one day and I fell asleep, so I had to actually continue it the next day. I don't know if you've ever had to do that with movies, but that's a surefire sign that the movie is total shit. Another one I watched, Axe, and I want to talk a little bit about this one because I am really surprised that this movie is not, I'm sure it's kind of developing a cult following, but I had never heard of this movie. But it's a movie from 2016, and it's called The Greasy Strangler. This movie kind of tells the story of this father and son. This is the most awkward, Axe, I'm going to tell you right now, I have never seen a more awkward movie in my life. The main characters are so awkward in this, and they're so socially off, and they don't get any social cues whatsoever. Like I said, it kind of tells the story of this father and son that live together, and they're kind of caught in this time warp, more or less. It kind of seems like, because they dress ridiculous, and they run a walking disco tour through their town. And they talk about, there's sequences in the movie where the father in the movie is Ronnie is the father in the movie. And he looks up to a window and he's like, yes, at one time there was earth, wind, and fire right in that window, and just stupid shit. This is a movie, Axe, if you have not seen it, that you absolutely have to see, and I recommend everybody seeing this film because it's such a quotable film. Ever since I watched this, I haven't been able to shake some of the quotes from it. So anyways, the father and son run this kind of disco tour or whatever, and that's what they do as a job. And at night, the father, Ronnie, moonlights as the Greasy Strangler, and he is this guy that is just covered in grease. They have these bizarre sequences where he's at a car wash. He goes to a car wash owned by a blind guy. So the guy has no idea that he's doesn't have a car. But this car wash is owned by this blind guy, and Ronnie goes in there every night after he does his killing as a Greasy Strangler and washes off, all the grease and everything. And he puts grease on everything, and it's just so over the top, Axe. It's just unbelievable. But some of the, quotable lines in this they're just fantastic. And you're not, once you watch this, you're never going to get this shit out of your head. But I can't say enough about this movie, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I hope, some people go out and watch it, because I think this movie has the potential, Axe. I would go so far to say this movie has the potential to be a modern cult classic like The Toxic Avenger. This movie is that good. And I know that's saying a lot, but, I'll stand by those words. So this is usually the time where we let people know what our theme is. So I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. Our theme this week, Axe, is anthologies. We're actually having anthology week. So I decided to watch a couple anthologies. And the first one I watched was from 2018, and it's a film called Grindhouse Nightmares. This movie has a lot of star power in it. Bridget Nielsen is in this movie. Linnea Quigley's in this. Michael Madsen. The first story kind of focuses on this guy that it's one of those, it's almost like a Saw type of movie where, the narrator's playing the game with the guy, and he's trapped in this area with rats and like in this underground, really nasty area that he can't escape from. And he's got to cut his own hand off, to survive, and different challenges and stuff, kind of like a Saw type. That's the first segment. But the thing I really thought was cool about this, Axe, was that this was a total tribute, total throwback to the whole Grindhouse era, because in between the segments they had this nurse looking horror host or whatever, but they also had these fake previews, fake trailers for Grindhouse type movies. And it was really, really interesting. One of them was, a knockoff of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was the Texas Chainsaw Hillbillies or something like that, or whatever. But it was just actual trailers of these, made up movies, these knockoffs and stuff. And it was really, really cool to see this. And they also had ridiculous advertisements, advertisements for cigarettes and different stuff, and just really cool stuff, like a tribute back to the 70s and the whole Grindhouse era. Just some really fun stuff. And like I said, the cast was fantastic. I really enjoyed this movie. But the second segment was about a nun that was seeking revenge. So it was kind of, another really cool throwback or whatever, but really enjoyed it. Grindhouse Nightmares. The other one I watched, Axe, was from 2015. And before we get into this, because I know you and I could talk about this guy for a little bit, but this was actually the last film of Herschel Gordon Lewis. And it was a movie called Blood Mania. Herschel Gordon Lewis's legacy, Axe, is, as everybody knows, he's the godfather of gore. He was the first person to really bring gore and blood and guts, into horror cinema, especially at that violent level that he did. But this movie is just one of those movies that I feel, he was past his twilight years, Axe. It's just a movie that I don't know if it really should have been made. And I understand the reasoning behind it. So the movie's divided up into three sections. There's three different directors. Herschel Gordon Lewis only directs one of the segments, and his was definitely the best. But I just couldn't get into it. It wasn't just wasn't for me. But with that being said, Axe, Herschel Gordon Lewis has done some tremendous movies. The original Blood Feast. You can't go wrong with that movie. And, of course, 2000 Maniacs, which, obviously spawned the whole 2001 Maniacs movement, which we've talked about on the show before. Herschel Gordon Lewis also has a role in a real personal favorite of my indie horror film list, and that's a movie called Chainsaw Sally, and he's also in that movie. And I don't want to talk too bad about Blood Mania. It's not for me, but Herschel Gordon Lewis, definitely a legend, and this is a movie that, what I'm trying to say, Axe, is I kind of wish I would have watched one of his old, classic films and kind of avoided this one. But you live and you learn. So another film I watched, Axe, the last one that I have for you this week, because I was just talking about it earlier, about how I am in the professional wrestling business, is a movie called Pro Wrestlers vs. Zombies. This movie's from 2014. This is a trauma film, so it's kind of batshit craziness from the get-go. And this was actually filmed at a live wrestling event a live pro wrestling event in Pennsylvania back in 2014, and it features a lot of actual pro wrestlers, not just, scrub actors. There's a lot of talent in this film. Roddy Piper is in this, Matt Hardy, the franchise Shane Douglas, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Just a lot of people are in this. And this is a film that kind of tells the story of these people are putting on a wrestling show, and this promoter has this kind of a deal of a lifetime, and he goes up to the franchise Shane Douglas, and he says, you bring all your guys in and do this show in this abandoned prison or something. And he agrees to do the show. The guys agree to do the show. And at the beginning of the movie, Shane Douglas does a botched tombstone pile driver that ends up killing this guy's brother. So this guy's brother is responsible for this whole zombie outbreak in the prison or whatever. And when the wrestlers arrive to the prison, just all hell breaks loose and the show never happens. They just end up killing fucking zombies the whole time, And this is a fun movie, And for somebody that's not a wrestling fan, I would probably not recommend this movie. But, me being a wrestling fan and being part of the business, I really enjoyed it. I thought that it incorporated a lot of the actual aspects of professional wrestling in it, and to have people like some of the stars and stuff. And as you know, Axe, Roddy Piper is he's a pretty accomplished actor. Everybody knows him from They Live, and
with wrestling, it's hit or miss with wrestlers going into movies like The Rock and other people who've done it. Sometimes you get a good one, sometimes you get a bad one. Times they're good. Oh, Hell in a Cell. It's like Hell in a Cell block.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention that, one of the other big names in this movie is Kurt Angle. And he has actually done some horror movies. There's a movie called Rivers of Darkness that he did. And Dylan Dog Dead of Night he also was in. And pretty good horror movies, and he's actually a pretty good actor himself. And I think it goes hand in hand, Axe. Being somebody in the business, I can say that if you're good in the ring, there's a good possibility, you might be able to act on screen. But you never know. Like you said, it's really hit or miss, because there's been a lot of success stories, but there's also been a lot of flops too. So yeah, but this is a pretty good film. Troma in their extensive library. This is a movie that skipped over the radar on me a little bit, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. So that's what I watched, X. What'd you watch this week?
This movie isn't really a horror movie. It's a fantasy. Like you said, it's near and dear to both of our hearts. It's a movie called Return to Oz. It's from 1985.
Oh, yeah.
This movie is just absolutely magical. Growing up as a kid, I would watch it a lot. I love both the original Wizard of Oz. Well, the colored one. There's also a silent one that's older. I like all of them, actually. But, Return to Oz is often overlooked and very different from the original. It's got some new characters. It shows you a lot more of the land of Oz. When I was a little kid, my grandma read me The Wizard of Oz. Ever since then, it just brings back really fond memories. This movie just has some amazing imagination in it. As a kid, I really liked the Gump. The Gump, it's just a couch with a moose head and some, and it flies around. But all these characters were just so likable. And Fairuza Balk played Dorothy, and she returns to Oz. Crow has been taken captive, and her and a group of her new friends, which include the Gump and Jack Pumpkinhead and TikTok, right?
Yep.
They all go and they make it to this cave where evil Gnome King has taken Scarecrow captive and put him in an ornament. And then they have to go and pick which ornament out of a whole room. And you also have the Wheelers in this movie. They're like the Flying Monkeys, but they're on wheels. Very creepy. Have the wicked Queen Mombi, and her many heads. The room full of heads is awesome. There's Powder of Life that she takes from Mombi. Visually, it's got a lot of style to it. Brian Henson in it for one. That really gives it that whole Henson vibe. Cinematography in it is really good. Anybody that hasn't seen this movie, go and watch Return to Oz. Even if you didn't like the original Wizard of Oz, this one's not really a musical, but it does have Oz and Dorothy. Everything else is very different about it, though. Mm-hmm. What do you think about this movie, Jeff?
This movie is definitely a classic in my mind, and I will say this, that we're going to reveal this right here, but we share the same mutual favorite movie. We both like The Wizard of Oz, as far as the original, but this movie, I completely agree with you, Axe. I think that this is one of the more overlooked movies. This is actually a Disney movie, and there's people that probably aren't aware of that either. And Fairuza Balk was really, really young in this movie. This was a lot different than her days, as Vicky Valancourt in the Waterboy or in The Craft. It's obviously a lot different role, but there's just so many elements, like you said, Ax, to this movie and so many layers. This is one of those movies that I could really just sit down and watch over and over and over again. One thing I really appreciate about this film, Ax, is, like you said, this isn't exactly a horror film by any means, but there's a lot of dark elements to this film. And one of the things, like you mentioned, was the fact that Princess Mombi has these kind of interchangeable heads. And it kind of reminded me of, I think it might have been maybe inspired by it, but there's a movie from Full Moon that came out called Trophy Heads. And it's kind of just based on this lady that rotates these heads in. So I think Return to Oz was just a really trend-setting film. And like you said, some of the characters are so in-depth. I absolutely love the Wheelers. I think the Wheelers are my personal favorite characters of this whole movie. And they're very creepy with their, not just their wheels and everything, but with their masks they have on and their funny hair designs, and just a lot of stuff to like about Return to Oz. And another thing I don't even think we've mentioned this yet, there is no Toto in this movie. There's a chicken named Bellina. The chicken is just kind of funny throughout the film with these like wisecracks and everything. And
they are scared to death of that chicken.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, Ax, I don't like fucking chickens either. So that kind of added to the, me being scared of this movie and being completely honest with you, Ax. When I was younger, because I used to rent this, film from the video store, and I used to rent it quite a bit. And the two elements that really scared me the most in this movie were the Wheelers and Bellina the chicken. So,
well, yeah, I mean, it's talking chicken. I mean, it's pretty frightening.
Right, exactly. But there are still some certain elements in this film, Max, that are, like you said, this is part of the Wizard of Oz series, because this was based on the books The Marvelous Land of Oz and Ozma of Oz. And, so like Uncle Henry and Auntie Em are still in this film. But just some of the crazy stuff that goes on in this film, they kind of take her to this mental institution, and take Dorothy down there and, gets all this test done and everything. And it's just a really strange movie. And if no one told you that this was a Wizard of Oz movie, if like they never said the name Dorothy Gale or anything, or you wouldn't know it. You really wouldn't know it with this film because it's so different. I mean, sure, there are dead giveaways about like the Scarecrow and stuff, but just the certain elements of this film, Max, are, like I said, it's dark. I really love it. I think it's a classic. And once again, my friend, you picked a great film to watch.
I love Return to Oz, Wizard of Oz. Oz is great, man.
It is. The whole Oz series, and L. Frank Baum, he really had an imaginative mind, a really creative mind to come up with all these fantastic children's stories and this whole world. He created this whole world, and there was 15 books, and that was just the L. Frank Baum books. They continued on after that even. Yeah, just a fantastic movie. So I guess it's time to get to our features here. This week is Anthology Week, and we got two for you, and I guess, Ax, we should go in chronological order here. So the first one is from 1985, and it's going to take me a minute to say all the damn directors here, so bear with me. It's from 1985. It's the movie Night Train to Terror, and it is directed by Greg Tallis, Jay Schlossberg Cohen, John Carr, Philip Marchot, and Tom McGowan. I hope I got all those right. So five directors, Ax, in this one of a movie that only has 3 segments. Basically, this movie, Ax, Night Train to Terror, kind of starts off on a train, obviously, and God and Satan are kind of talking. and they're kind of having a meeting of the minds, and they're kind of obviously disagreeing like you would imagine God and Satan would do. And they kind of start telling these stories, and they're going to be your narrators throughout this film. And the first story kind of focuses on this guy, Harry Billings. He's a patient in an insane asylum, and he kind of undergoes hypnosis. And it also focuses on this couple that kind of drifts off. They're on like a road trip, and they kind of drift off, and they get kind of caught into this insane asylum. And there's some weird stuff going on in this insane asylum, isn't there, Axe?
Yeah.
And one of the things that really threw me off about this, Axe, is like the female doctor that's in the insane asylum really takes a liking to this guy. And the sexual tension, man, at times is like palpable. It's unbelievable. She's kind of diverting his attention, from what's really going on there. We find out a little later that what's going on is they're selling these bodies, they're killing these people and selling these bodies to medical schools for profit. So there's obviously a business end of this going on. But what'd you think of the first segment?
I think all of the segments were really awesome. This one in the insane asylum, you got all the electroshock therapy going on, and all the dismemberment is super cool, heads in a jar and all of that. Did you bring up this guy's name? I'm drawing a blank.
Well, I had it written down as Harry Billings was his name.
Night Court guy, right?
Yep.
That was a great show back in the day, Night Court. But
oh, yeah.
Harry Billings, he also played in House, which is a really cool movie.
Yeah, House is a pretty good film, and it spawned a couple of interesting sequels, too.
I like the second one, but I don't care for the third.
The second one, is that the one with the old man?
Grandpa.
Yep. I did like that one, yeah. I didn't like it as much as the first one, but yeah, I did. I think I got that down in the VHS vault somewhere, X, but...
With Night Train to Terror, that guy, Harry Billings, he plays just a crazy, crazy psychopath. He sells it really good. This whole train is bizarre, man. It's like you got this band. You got this band playing the song, and it's when you dance with me, everybody's got something to do, everybody but you.
Yeah, did you like that aspect of it? Did you like how the band was? I mean, even though they were playing the same song over and over again, it was still to me it never got repetitive.
What I got out of it was they were either the worst or the best band in the world, and God and Satan were fighting over.
Now, see, I didn't draw that conclusion, but now that you say that, it makes total fucking sense.
Right, it's either the best song you ever heard or the worst, and they're trying to decide what it is. But.
Well, either way, it's stuck in our fucking head. I mean, like we can't get it out now. Yeah, I thought that aspect of it was kind of weird, but I really enjoyed it. Ax, I know this is the first time that you've actually watched this movie. I've seen this one numerous times, but so this was kind of my recommendation. And then it's funny because this week we kind of flip-flop. Like the other film that we're going to review here in a second was your recommendation in a film that I've actually never seen. So anyways, we talked a little bit about the first segment, so let's talk a little bit about the second segment. We'll kind of go in segments here, Ax, because that's how you got to do anthologies. The second one focuses on this lady, Greta Connors. She works in like a carnival to support her music career, and she meets a guy who kind of seems like a sleazeball, and he's in the porn industry, Ax, so obviously he's probably a sleazeball, right? She's doing these porno films, and she kind of gets noticed by this college guy, this guy named Glenn. He kind of takes a liking to her, and they kind of get together, and they kind of talk with this, George is the guy's name, the porno guy, and he runs this, like secret society. I guess I'll say this, Ax. It seems like a secret society of supervillains, like the whole like Legion of Doom type of thing. That's kind of what I got out of this. It's just he runs this near-death experience club, for these people that have had like a near-death experience. So this Glenn guy hasn't really had a near-death experience, and they have this giant fucking beetle bug that somehow gets in the house, and he kind of lands on Glenn while they're sitting around this table, and he has this near-death experience. And this is a really, really strange segment. This was out of the three, this was probably the weirdest. Axe, what do you think?
For sure. They're all playing Russian roulette with these death games that they're creating. Then, like you said, out of the blue comes this bug. But I really enjoyed the claymation in this film. It's maybe not the best I've ever seen, but on a low budget, it was pretty good. I really enjoy claymation. It's definitely a lost art form that today's generation has no idea about.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And especially, Axe, for 1985, this is a movie that came out, this is 34 years old now. So this is a very, this is a dated film, but it's definitely, I think this is one of the movies that anthology-wise that has probably skipped over a few people, yourself included, actually.
But I was shocked at how good this movie is and the fact that I had never seen it. Because I've seen a lot of movies that weren't very good, but you like them for a certain reason. This movie was actually fantastic, and there wasn't anything that I didn't like about this movie. And the fact that I'm, about to be 33 years old and had never seen it before, I'm absolutely shocked, because this whole movie, it's got multiple layers, and it's got gore. It's got awesome claymation. The demons in this movie are really cool. It's very dark, very evil. I love how evil this movie is, actually. That's what I got out of it. It's so dark, and it's another one of those movies that plays on religion, plays with theology. The whole God is Dead book. It's got all the depth, the psychology in it. Definitely a great anthology, and I'm glad I finally got the chance to check it out.
Yeah, me too, Axe, definitely. And you said you brought up the whole God is dead thing, so that kind of leads into the third one. We're kind of briefly talk about the third one a little bit, but it kind of focuses on this guy that like a German leader was arrested, for a murder, and it was a long time ago, of a family member, and it kind of focuses on this writer, Axe, that the whole story. This guy is like, he writes this God is Dead, and he gets more popular, than it's almost like more popular than God himself with this book. The third segment, I thought it was interesting. It was, I'll tell you one thing I really did like about this one, Axe, is I really enjoyed the monsters in the third segment.
The third one was my favorite.
I think so too. I think it was my favorite. For me, it would go 3, 1, 2. Because the second one was good, but it was just too much of a jumble fuck, But I did, overall, stacking up, this film is just absolutely fantastic.
I really enjoyed, how the devil, he takes his boots off and he's got hooves. It's a lot like the Dunwich Horror, H.P. Lovecraft. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, I'm a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan. So that was definitely read Dunwich Horror all over it. So I think that's really why I liked it. And like I said, the demons are super cool.
I really enjoyed it. I think it's a really good film. And, well, I'll start it off this week because this is a movie that I recommended. And I'm going to give this a solid 3.5 blood drops. Axe, what say you on Night Train to Terror?
No, I'm going to go a little bit better. I'm going to go with 4 blood drops on this one. I really, really dig this movie.
That's interesting, Axe. I introduced you to this movie, and you like it a little bit more than me. But I don't get me wrong, I do love it. It's just that I think it's that second segment that really kind of throws me off a little bit. But overall, though, a fantastic movie. Our other movie, Axe, is a movie that you came up with. It was your idea, so you know what? I'm going to throw the floor over to you, actually. And this movie's from 1990.
Two Evil Eyes. It's 2 films, 2 directors. The first one being George Romero, and the second one is Dario Argento, who are both well-known horror icons. The first one acts in the case of Mr. Valdemar. It deals with greed, hypnotherapy, and the dangers that a lot of people thought would come from hypnotism and all the new age stuff that people are so scared about. Then it deals with the supernatural. Got this idea, you see it all the time now, but where the ghosts are trying to get into this world and they need a portal and they can see you, but you can't see them. The whole first movie really builds up. It's got a lot of momentum, builds up to the end. George Romero, his movies always seem to have a moral plot to them. And they get their just desserts in the end. It's kind of what Romero's always about, is what you deserve. To me, that I think that's what a lot of his movies are. The people that deserve to survive do. The people that deserve to die do.
I would agree with that, Axe. I think the first segment was just as good as the second segment in this film. I like Romero's version, and I think you can attribute that to his style, like you just said. And I really enjoyed Adrienne Barbeau in this. The thing I really liked about her character, Axe, was there's a point in time in this film where she's almost feeling a little sympathetic for what they're doing to her husband, but then it just kind of she's so corrupted by this this doctor. And
yeah, and like I said, with the hypnotherapy, I have friends that are hypnotherapists, and the whole idea that you can go down into a trance and be hypnotized, and somebody can just come and fuck you all up, and that's basically what they do.
I like how it kind of came together, though, and I like the creature design. I like how the old man, Valdemar, ended up. The whole thing with them, storing him in the freezer, and they had, the whole debacle with the nurse there. They kind of had to hide Valdemar from the nurse, which kind of made for an interesting little, subplot. Because there's times where it's really close calls. You think that somebody's gonna find out about this and they're gonna be exposed, but obviously they got their comeuppance in the end. But so the second segment, it was the Black Cat.
Dario Argento on this one had Harvey Keitel in this film, and if you're an animal lover, this movie will probably piss you off, or you might really like it. One or the other.
Oh yeah.
So it's the Black Cat. Edgar Allan Poe. Dario does something very, very strange, very much like Dario, with this story. It's a story about reincarnation with this black cat who is the familiar spirit of a witch who is hung and comes back reincarnated. And then the cat still holds the memories. It's got like the little noose in its fur, buried in the white fur. This movie is all about this photographer guy, and he's a drunk. He's on his last leg, and he needs something great to really propel him. Out of desperation, he just starts torturing this cat and taking pictures of it. Easy, because the world that we live in, that kind of stuff sells. People get away with calling atrocious things art because it's more edgy. It gets attention. But this guy, just like the first story, he gets his just rewards. I can't really talk about this film without talking about the kittens.
Oh, yeah.
The dead body gets walled up with a cat, and the cat lays kittens inside the dead body. And then they find the body in the wall, and then the cats come out of the stomach and the guts, and it's just the most gnarliest thing you ever saw. It's one of my all-time favorite scenes. I just fucking love those little cats. It's like, I don't even know what to say about it. It's so original. Nobody else has done anything like it. I could even back up and you start the film off with another Edgar Allan Poe story, which is The Pit and the Pendulum. You're on the camera on this pendulum, on this blade, and it's sawing through this woman's body, and you get to actually follow the camera through the body like the blade. So many awesome original horror ideas in the Black Cat. I know you like Romero's, but I think Argento just blew it out of the water. It's just so gruesome.
Yeah. I'll agree with you there, Ax. And one thing I really, really enjoyed was this whole time he's, this photographer here, he's trying to kind of conceive this whole thing from his neighbors, these really nosy ass neighbors. One of the things I really liked about it was the whole, my favorite scene in the whole thing was where he was driving by and he had the dummy of her. It was, basically a puppet with her picture there, and just like, oh, they won't even know, and just like, oh man, it's so innovative and just so cool, this is good fucking film. And, I could say the same thing, Ax, that you said about Night Train to Terror. I can say that about Two Evil Eyes. I'm a little ashamed that I had not seen this movie. I had seen this movie on different platforms before, but I never got around to watching it. Man, am I glad I did. This is just a really great film through and through. And, as I said, I like the Romero segment, but I really like the Argento segment too. I think I like them equally. I don't say I like one or the other better, because there was just certain parts of both of them that I really, really enjoyed. And another thing I really liked about The Black Cat was I love the backdrop, the city, and it was just so like urbanized, and just, it felt real, it felt like just real horror, real gritty horror. And Argento, he's always done a great job of that, but obviously his style is, it's a little more out there than that. I think The Black Cat was more of a, Ax, if you'd agree with me, more of like a stripped down horror than some of his other works.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole plot was a little shaky. That's where Romero's story was better. He had a more solid plot, but Argento had the gore in his. So they both got their pluses and minuses, but Mario Argento his plots are always so are out there, that's whimsical. It's not super easy to grasp all the time. Makes you think a little bit more.
Yeah.
With the witches, that whole part to me kind of seems like it's a little shaky. He's trying to mix a bunch of Edgar Allan Poe stories into one, and he did a really good job. It's just got some of the greatest gore ever.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Ax. This is just it's a gem, I'm going to let you handle the rating on this one, because this is a movie that you recommended and that you've seen numerous times. So what are you giving this, Ax? 2 Evil Eyes out of 5 blood drops. What are you giving it?
Giving this one a 4 too. I think both of these movies are on equal terms with each other. So 4 blood drops for me.
I'm going to give this a 4 too. I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to say that Two Evil Eyes is just a little bit better than Night Train to Terror, but I think that both of these films are amazing anthologies, and they're movies that if you're a diehard horror fan like we are, you have to check them out. And they're movies you can definitely watch over and over again. So with that being said, anything else?
Oh, I'm ready to go play on my new gong.
All right. Well, you heard it right there, folks. So one more time real quick, Ax, what's the name of the convention again, or the show again?
It's Pyro de Mayo. It's at Nelson Ledge's camping site, Rock Quarry. And also check me out. I'm Fire Tiger Soundscapes on Facebook.
And are you just on Facebook, or are you on YouTube with that too?
It's on YouTube as well.
Okay. And also, folks, check me out at the Ultimate Championship Wrestling on May 18th if you're in the Bay City, Michigan area. Thank you for listening to the Jeff and Ax Horror Show. My name is Jeff.
Max.
And we will catch you next time.